From Universal Pictures DreamWorks Pictures Imagine Entertainment present in The Cat in the Hat, the movie audiobook by Dr. Seuss. Chapter 1. A Gray Day and Two Very Different Siblings. On 24th Street in Anvil, every house looked exactly the same, perfectly painted, with lawns cut to the same height, and white fences that looked like flawless teeth. But inside number 12, the atmosphere was far from perfect. Sully Walden sat on the sofa, crossing items off her things to do before noon list. She was only 8 years old, but she organized her life like the CEO of a major corporation. Her hair didn't have a single strand out of place, and her dress was so starched it crunched when she moved. Conrad, stop jumping. You're going to leave marks on the floor, and Mom has the company party today, she stated without looking up from her notebook. Conrad, her older brother, was the exact opposite. He was a whirlwind of energy trapped in a house that hated mess. At that moment, he was trying to slide down the stairs using a silver tray as a sled. Relax, Sally. Rules were made to be broken, or at least bent a little, he replied, just before crashing into an umbrella stand which, luckily, didn't break. Just then, Joan Walden, their mother, rushed into the living room. She looked stressed, holding a phone to one shoulder and her bag in the other. She worked for Mr. Humberflood, a man who would fire his employees if he found a single speck of dust on their jackets. Children, listen to me carefully, Joan said pleadingly. The real estate party is tonight. Spotless. I'll lose my job. No playing, no mess, and please keep Conrad away from the kitchens. Before leaving, she cast a suspicious glance toward the house next door. There, on the porch, was Lawrence Quing, the neighbor who always tried to impress her with fake smiles and expensive suits, but who really just wanted to send Conrad to military school to get rid of him. Joan sighed, blew a kiss, and closed the door. The house fell into a deathly silence, interrupted only by the pitter-patter of the rain starting to fall outside. The children sat staring out the window, trapped in a gray afternoon that promised to be the most boring day of their lives. They had no idea that, somewhere in the house, a pair of white gloves and a giant hat were about to appear and change everything. Chapter 2. The intruder in the giant hat. The rain drummed rhythmically against the window pane. Conrad and Sully sat in their chairs, staring at the garden, as if they were waiting for the grass to grow a millimeter. The silence was so heavy that the ticking of the wall clock sounded like a hammer blow. This is officially the most boring day in the history of humanity, Conrad grumbled, swinging his feet. It's a productive day for reflection, Sully retorted, though her own voice sounded unconvinced as she crossed the word boredom off her list. Suddenly, a metallic crash echoed from upstairs. Boom! The children jumped from their seats. The family's pet fish, a very strict orange specimen who lived in a glass bowl, began to thrash frantically. Someone has broken in. Call the authorities. Note this down on your list of disasters. The fish shouted, bubbling with pure nervousness. Conrad, always eager for some action, ran toward the stairs. Sully followed him, more out of fear of being left alone than out of curiosity. When they reached the landing, the closet door burst open. From the shadows emerged an impossible figure. It was a cat, but not a normal cat. He was nearly 6 feet tall, walked upright on 2 legs, and wore jet black fur with a gleaming white chest. But the strangest thing was his attire, a huge top hat with red and white stripes, and a giant red bow at his neck. "Hello!" the cat exclaimed in a high-pitched, enthusiastic voice, bowing so deeply that his hat almost touched the floor. "I've been dying to meet the famous Walden siblings." The children backed away, mouths agape. The cat didn't seem to notice their fear. He began to walk down the hallway, examining the paintings with a magnifying glass he pulled out of nowhere. What are you?" Conrad managed to ask. "I am the cat in the hat, the king of entertainment, the duke of fun, well, you get the idea," the feline replied with a laugh. See, you're suffering from a severe case of acute boredom. Luckily for you, I have the cure. No, get out of here, the fish shouted, jumping out of the water to point at the intruder with a fin. Giant cats are not allowed in this house. Mom said we couldn't make a mess. The cat looked at the fish with a mischievous smile. Oh, a talking fish. How quaint, but tell me, my scaly friend, who said anything about making a mess? I've come to teach these children that life is a game, and the game has just begun. With a snap of his gloved fingers, the cat made an umbrella appear and began to balance the fishbowl on the tip of his nose, while Conrad's eyes lit up with excitement and Solius' eyes widened in pure terror. Chapter 3: The Red Box and the Dynamic Dude. The living room, which previously looked like a museum of cold porcelain, was now the stage for a circus act. The cat was jumping over the lamps and juggling the plates from the gala dinner, while the fish screamed warnings that no one listened to. Get me down from here, you lunatic feline. The fish shrieked from the air. The cat landed with feline elegance and with a theatrical movement made a huge red box appear with a golden lock in the center. The lock had a peculiar shape. It was a small metal crab that seemed to be guarding the contents. Children, I present to you my most prized possession, the cat said with a voice that mixed mystery and excitement. Inside here lives pure fun. But beware, never, under any circumstances, should you open the crab lock. If you do, this world and mine will mix. And let us just say things will get a little sticky. Conrad looked at the lock with a spark of temptation in his eyes, but before he could get closer, the cat gave 3 taps on the lid. Come out, my little friends, it is time to play. The box opened, and in a burst of confetti and smoke, 2 identical creatures jumped out. They were small, wearing red onesies, and had maidens of electric blue hair that looked like they had received a 20,000-volt shock. On their chests they wore signs that said, Thing 1 and Thing 2. Hello, hello, the things shouted in unison, starting to run across the walls as if gravity were just an optional suggestion. What are those things? Sully asked, protecting her to-do list like a shield. They are my associates, the cat explained with pride. They have a golden rule. They always do exactly the opposite of what they are told. It is wonderful for parties in less than a minute. Thing 1 was using the silk curtains as hammocks, and Thing 2 was trying to skate over the food buffet using slices of ham as skis. The chase was absolute. Stop them, Conrad shouted, trying to catch Thing 1, but the creature was faster than lightning. In the middle of the uproar, the family dog, Nevins, came barking into the room. Nevins, scared by the thing's blue hair, jumped over the red box. As he did, his collar accidentally caught on the crab lock. With a sharp tug, the lock snapped off the box and hung from the dog's neck. Yeah, the cat exclaimed, losing his professional smile for the first time. That wasn't in the script. Nevins, terrified by the sound of the box beginning to vibrate, bolted out the back door toward the street, carrying with him the only key to close the magical portal. The lock, Sully screamed. If Mom comes back and sees the dog with that crab, or if the house fills with magic, we're doomed. The cat adjusted his hat and looked at the children with an adventurous glint. Well, kids, it seems the stay-at-home's plan has been cancelled. We've got a dog to hunt and a world to save. Chapter 4: The SLOW and the Great Pursuit. The dog has the lock, I repeat. The dog has the lock, the fish screamed, swimming in circles so fast he almost created a small tornado in his bowl. Sully was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Her to-do list now had a new and terrifying entry. 1. Prevent the end of the world from starting in my living room. Don't you worry, my little grasshoppers, the cat said, pulling a Yankee out of his ear. For an emergency of this magnitude, we need first-class transportation. The cat led them to the garage, where instead of the family car, an impossible machine appeared. The SLOW, super luxurious omnidirectional whatchamacallit. It was a bright red vehicle with strange levers, buttons that did nothing, and an engine that sounded like a mix between a blender and a trombone. "Hop aboard!" the cat exclaimed, putting on a pair of aviator goggles. Conrad and Sully jumped into the back seat, while Thing 1 and Thing 2 hung off the rear bumper as if they were flags in the wind. The engine roared, and the car shot out of the garage, leaving a trail of smoke that smelled like cotton candy. Meanwhile, out on the street, poor Nevins was running desperately with the crab lock jingling on his collar. But he wasn't alone. Lawrence Quinn, the nosy neighbor, spotted him from his car. "That's the Walden dog, and what is that shiny thing on its neck?" Quinn muttered with a malicious grin. "If I catch that dog, I'll have the perfect excuse to get into the house, ruin that brat Conrad, and marry Joan." The chase was absolute madness. The cat drove the SLOW over sidewalks, up the walls of houses, and dodged ice cream carts. "Watch out for that mailbox!" Sully screamed, gripping the seat. "Mailbox? I only see a fun obstacle," the cat replied, making the car jump over a moving truck. Finally, they cornered Nevins in an alley, but just as Conrad was about to catch him, a greasy, gloved hand reached out first. It was Quinn. Well, look what I found," Quinn said with a fake laugh, holding Nevins by the collar. "A lost dog and a gent cat." Quinn looked the cat up and down. The cat, for once, stayed quiet, trying to hide behind a lamppost that was 3 times thinner than he was. "Give us back the dog, Quinn," Conrad demanded, stepping forward. "Oh, I certainly will," Quinn replied, tossing the dog into his car. "But I'll return him directly to your mother, and when she sees this strange lock and the mess you've made, well, let us just say you're going to love military school, Conrad." Quinn sped off, heading toward Jonah's office. "We have to stop him," Sully cried. "If he gets there before us, Mom will see everything and we'll never get to watch you again. Or even worse," the cat added, regaining his spirit, "we'll never get to have a tea party with crazy hats." Full speed ahead, the SLOW shot out a stream of purple sparks and blasted off after Quinn's car, beginning a race against the clock and against common sense. Continuamos con el capítulo 5 in English. Chapter 5. The House of Infinite Chows. The SLOW screeched to a halt in front of the Walden house, leaving a rainbow-colored tire mark on the pavement. Conrad and Sully ran out, leaving the cat struggling with a lever that had gotten stuck. "We have to get inside before Quinn arrives," Conrad shouted, pushing the front door open. But as they opened it, they didn't find their living room. What they saw left them paralyzed. Because the crab lock was missing, the red box had unleashed all the magic from the cat's world. The house no longer obeyed the laws of physics. The hallway stretched for miles toward the horizon, the walls had turned a neon purple color, and the furniture floated in the air as if it were in outer space. "By a shrimp-ass whiskers," the cat exclaimed, entering behind them. "It looks like the house has had an outbreak of unbridled imagination. And it's a bit messy, but you have to admit the decor has improved. Right, cat, this is a disaster," Sully shrieked, watching her to-do list fly away and turn into a flock of paper birds. "Mom will be here any second with her boss, and shall see that our house is a satellite dimensions." Suddenly, the floor began to ripple like jelly. From the center of the living room rose a spiral staircase that climbed toward a sky that was now inside the ceiling. "Look," Conrad pointed. "There's the box." The red box was floating at the top of a mountain of twisting sofas and appliances. But there was a problem. Lawrence Quinn had just burst through the back door, dragging Nevins the dog and shouting Jonah's name. Quinn didn't have time to react. As he took a step, the floor swallowed his shoes and launched him down a gant slide of purple jam. "What is this place? Help! I demand to speak to a manager," Quinn screamed as he bounced off walls that now had eyes and were laughing at him. "The lock," Conrad shouted, seeing that Nevins had shaken off the crab fastener in the middle of the chassis. The lock fell into a river of bubbling liquid flowing across the ceiling. Conrad knew this was his chance. For the first time in his life, it wasn't about breaking rules for fun. It was about breaking the rules of logic to save his family. "I'll go get it," Conrad announced, jumping onto a floating chair. "Cat, help Sully." As Conrad climbed across lamps that turned into clouds, the cat pulled out a pair of baseball bats and began playing whack-a quain, using the house's magic to keep the neighbor from catching the children. The house was a labyrinth of colors, strange sounds, and magical danger. Time was running out, and the sound of Moma's car pulling up outside echoed like thunder through the dimension. Chapter 6. The Great Closure and Goodbye to Chaws. The house was now a whirlwind of impossible colors. The purple liquid climbed the walls as if it were alive, and the ceiling looked like a stormy electric sky. Conrad was hanging from a chandelier that swung over the abyss the hallway had become. "Conrad, the lock!" Sully screamed from a floating ledge, pointing to the small metal crab shining in the middle of a vortex of magic. Below, Quinn was trying to climb a mountain of gent cakes, but Thing 1 and Thing 2 were using him like a trampoline, sinking him deeper and deeper into the milieu. "When I get out of here, you're all going to reform school," Quinn howled, his face covered in frosting. Conrad looked down. He was scared, but he remembered his mother's words. It wasn't just about cleaning. It was about protecting his home. With a desperate leap, he threw himself into the void, catching the crab lock in midair just before landing on the red box, which was vibrating with fury. "I've got it!" Conrad exclaimed. But closing the box was not easy. The magic was pushing outward with the force of a hurricane. The cat, losing his joking tone for a moment, moved in to help. "You have to do it now, Conrad. Use all your will. If you don't close it, the fun will swallow us all." With one last effort, Conrad snapped the crab lock into the slot. Click! In an instant, the deafening noise stopped. There was a flash of white light, and suddenly the world stopped spinning. But the victory was bittersweet. The portal had closed, but the house was in ruins. There were stains of color everywhere, broken furniture, and a terrifying silence. "We did it," Sully whispered, looking at the mess. "But Mum will be here in 5 minutes." "We're doomed. The house is destroyed, and Mr. Humberflub is going to fire her." Conrad lowered his head, taking full responsibility for the first time. "It's my fault. I opened the box." The cat approached them, taking off his hat with respect. "You know, kids, today you've learned something that many adults forget." Conrad learned that rules exist for a reason, and Sully learned that sometimes a little chaz is necessary to grow. "My work here is done. Are you leaving?" Conrad asked, feeling a strange sadness. "But what about the house?" The cat winked at them and pointed toward the back door. "Sometimes you just need the right equipment for a deep clean." From the shadows of the garden a gigantic machine appeared, full of mechanical arms, brushes, vacuums, and polishers. The dynamic cleaning machine. The cat jumped into the controls. Thing 1 and Thing 2 put on their safety helmets, and with a musical rhythm, they began to sweep through the house at superhuman speed. In less time than it takes for a raindrop to fall, the purple liquid vanished, the furniture returned to its place, and the floor shone so brightly you could use it as a mirror. "Goodbye, friends," the cat shouted as the machine vanished in a magical glow. "Remember, fun is a state of mind, but keep the locks closed." Just as the front door began to open, the cat disappeared up the chimney. Chapter 7. The glow of a new friendship. The front door opened with a slight creak. John Walden walked in, followed by the imposing and stern Mr. Humberflub. They both stopped dead in their tracks, but not because of the disaster they expected to find. Quite the opposite. The house wasn't just clean. It was radiant. The parquet floors shined like gold. The scent of fresh flowers filled the air, and not a single speck of dust dared to settle on the furniture. "My, Walden," Mr. Humberflub said, running a gloved finger across a table. I must say, this is acceptable. Very acceptable. Sally and Conrad stood by the stairs, hands intertwined, with nervous smiles. At that moment the back door burst open and a purple jam-covered Lawrence Quain, with wild hair and missing a shoe, barged into the living room. "Joan, your children, a giant cat, blue-haired creatures, it's the end of the world," Quinn screamed, pointing a trembling finger at the kids. Mr. Humberflood looked him up and down with deep disgust. "Mrs. Walden, who is this disheveled and unpleasant Mag?" he asked, wiping his hand, as if the air around Quain were dirty. Joan looked at Quain. She no longer saw the successful man he pretended to be. She saw a liar trying to get her children into trouble. "He's just a neighbor who was just leaving," Joan said firmly. "Get out of my house, Lawrence, and Dante come back." Quain, humiliated and defeated, stumbled out of the house, while Nevins, the dog, gave one last triumphant bark from the sofa. The party was a resounding success. As the guests laughed and enjoyed themselves, Joan approached her children in a quiet moment. "I am so proud of you both," she told them, hugging them tightly. "I know it wasn't easy staying here alone all day." Conrad and Sully looked at each other. They had gone from being two strangers who fought over everything to being an inseparable team. "Well, Mom," Conrad said with a mischievous glint in his eyes, "let us just say we found a way to keep ourselves entertained." That night, when the house finally fell silent, the siblings went up to their rooms. As they passed the hallway closet, they saw something that made them stop. On the floor, right where the cat had first appeared, was a small red feather and a piece of shiny confetti. Outside the window, the rain had stopped and a bright moon illuminated the neighborhood. In the distance on the hill, the silhouette of a striped hat could be seen fading into the horizon, while a playful laugh seemed to float on the wind. Conrad and Sully smiled. The house was back to normal, but they would never be the same, because now they knew that even on the grayest, most boring day, magic and fun are always waiting just around the corner, or inside a red box. The End, by Dr. Seuss. The story was created by Alec Berg, David Mendel, and Jeff Schaffer.